a lot of these scholarship opportunities that I got weren't advertised. I just was like, hey, I saw this workshop. I can't afford it. It was thousands of dollars to go. Usually a company pays for it, right? And I was like, does it hurt to just ask if they will help me out, and maybe award me a scholarship? And a couple times I did, they gave me a scholarship, and those connections have been invaluable for me in my career too now.
Hi, welcome to the third episode of the How I Broke Into Tech podcast from Udacity. I'm your host, Jared Moulton, and today we chat with Satoshi Iwako, a software engineer at Udacity who got his job at Udacity after serving coffee at a local coffee shop in Davis, California. Really enjoyed chatting with Satoshi. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it too. Satoshi, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Of course.
I'd love to start by just having you introduce yourself, tell us your name, your job title, where you work, and how long you've been there.
Yep. So my name is Satoshi. I'm a senior front-end developer at Udacity, and I've been here for about 5 years.
5 years, it's a long time.
Yeah.
Is Udacity your first job in the tech space?
Not necessarily. I did have a role before at a small startup called Food Gnome. And yeah, I was there for about a couple of years, but I moved on to Udacity because I felt like I wasn't learning enough at that role. So
All right, so you've been in tech for, give or take 5-6 years or something along those lines.
yeah, that's correct.
Gotcha. Growing up, what did you want to do? Did you want to be a software engineer?
Definitely not. That did not come to mind. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an airline pilot for a time being. And then I think a couple of years after that, I was super interested in sharks because I lived pretty close to SeaWorld in San Diego. And yeah, and then after I think mid high school, I wanted to be just a professional soccer player. Didn't care for school, didn't care for my education and stuff like that. So I just kind of coasted. And then I only really got interested in tech pretty much after I graduated college.
Okay, well, we're going to dive into that in a minute, but I do want to go back to SeaWorld for a moment. So you were into sharks and you live near SeaWorld. How often were you going to SeaWorld?
Pretty often actually, because my mom bought us like an annual pass, and we pretty much go like maybe every other weekend or something like that.
Did you have a favorite shark at the aquarium or favorite fish that you like to spend time with?
Honestly, it's been a long time, so I don't really recall, but I remember I would bring like a notebook of like all these different sharks that I would kind of find on the internet, and I'd print them out and paste them in my little collection, and I would like bother the people working there. But I'm pretty sure the people I was asking were like just like the people claiming.
Like, I don't know what you're
Yeah,
talking about, kid.
right.
All right, but we're going to get back to the tech story, but I am interested in sharks. And so if you had to stack rank your 5 favorite sharks, what would they be in what order?
Oh gosh. I don't know if I have really a top five, but definitely
Eight?
like whale sharks are up there, of course, because they're huge. They're but they're not dangerous at all, and um uh, just very majestic animals. And then of course great white sharks come to mind. Um I think it was a mako shark that I was really interested in because it could like jump into the air super high. I don't know. I don't really remember my top shark picks, but
I think the whale shark, the great white, and the mako is a pretty good short list.
yeah,
I think hammerhead would make my short list. Uh,
yeah, it was definitely interesting.
Not sure where, but those are pretty scary. If I saw one of those, I'd be pretty afraid, I think, in the water.
Mhm.
Not as afraid as I would be for a great white, but still afraid. Let's get back to the tech story. So you finish high school, you wanted to be a soccer player at that point. What happened next? What did you do after high school? You mentioned you weren't as interested in academics at the time.
Right.
What happened? What did you do?
So unfortunately, I lost my dad to cancer around the time I was graduating high school, and that kind of turned my life upside down. And so I couldn't play soccer anymore because we couldn't afford it. And so, I graduated high school and I really had no idea what I wanted to do with my life at that point. And so, after after graduating, I realized that, educating myself was the only way up at this point. So I went back to my community college, or I went to community college, and kind of did a little bit of soul searching there.
When you went to community college, did you have a specialization?
Um, I did at the end by the time I was transferring, but I think about a year in, I had no idea until I got into uh pretty much like remedial math. And it's funny because growing up I was so bad at math, and it was just really frustrating for me um throughout my childhood. But in school, like, if you don't understand something, they move on to the next thing. And with math, like, it's so important that you understand all the foundations because they build up on each other.
Right.
And
You
so,
It's something you're just, completely out of the loop as you advance.
exactly. Yep.
So you got into remedial math. Still any interest in coding or software engineering?
No,
Do you know
not yet,
what it
still.
was to be a software engineer at that time in your life?
Uh, no. Nothing really kind of came to mind while I was studying. I did dabble like here and there with some Python, I think, just because I had a friend at the time that was really into programming as well, but it seemed like too academic for me to like really understand and grasp. So yeah, no, nothing really tech uh really came to mind when I was in community college.
And then what happened after community college? So you got your associate's degree. Did you
Right.
farm and transfer?
Yeah, so I got my associate's degree. I didn't get into my top school, which was a bummer.
Cool.
I really wanted to go to UC Berkeley. So that was
UC
like my
Berkeley. Shame on you. Shame on you, UC Berkeley. Not accepting Satoshi.
they had a great math program there, though. Yeah, for sure. But I basically got into UC Davis, so that was my second pick. And yeah, I went to school for math, applied math specifically.
How do you like it?
Just my time at UC Davis,
Your time at UC Davis,
just
applying,
studying math in general.
studying applied math.
Yeah, I mean, it was a phenomenal experience for sure. I've never really lived away from home, right? Like in San Diego, so that was a really fun experience. Yeah, how to it was grueling for sure. Doing all those proof based like finals and stuff like that, but at the end of it, like it really kind of trained me to think very abstractly. So, no, yeah, I really enjoyed my time at UC Davis.
Do you think there's any applied math concepts that you use on a regular basis, whether in your life or in coding, or is it something that you just kind of have in your back pocket as like a philosophy on the universe?
That's an interesting question. Honestly, like math is one of those things where if you don't use it, you kind of lose it, like
Like a lamp.
and I'm definitely not like doing integrals or like, solving proofs and stuff like that, but it definitely it trained me to like think abstractly and also like problem solve, right? when you're tackling a math problem, there's just like there's definitely very many different approaches you can take, right? There's not like a one size fits all solution, right? And so I kind of treat software engineering problems in the same way. Like, you can attack it in so many different ways, and everyone has such a unique, different way of thinking about a problem. So,
I want to get back to that. So when we talk a little bit more about what life as a developer is like, let's make sure we chat about problem solving and what your approach is and how it changes and maybe how you can kind of unblock yourself when you get stuck or you run into a challenge. But let's continue down the path of college and post college. So you're at UC Davis, you're an applied math major, you finish college, you're still not yet into computer programming, or was the interest starting to become more of a part of your life at that point?
so at UC Davis, like in the applied program, we are exposed to some programming. So we did take some C and C++ courses. And we took those. They were very difficult as well. I had a pretty difficult professor. Um, but it still didn't get me thinking that I would want to be a software engineer. It was just kind of a requirement for us, so we just took it. And it wasn't until I was uh, grading for a graduate student over the summer, one summer, where I built this like Frankenstein of a quiz generator. Um, and that's when I saw how powerful like automation is. And yeah, I think that's where I really kind of started considering software engineering as a career.
So this was you were still at school and you were helping a graduate assistant grade a project, is that right?
Oh no, so there's a calculus course over the summer taught by a graduate student, and he had a really interesting idea of having custom weekly quizzes. And each week you would see like the new quiz questions from like the material that's been covered, that week. And then any other like quiz questions that you got wrong in the previous weeks, they would keep reappearing until you got it right. So um it was a really cool idea, but I quickly realized at the beginning that it's gonna get super tedious, super fast because there was like what 50, 60 students in the class. And
And
so
every student had their own quiz for each quiz.
exactly. Yeah.
How'd you get pulled into this? Like, how did you even, decide, hey, I'll sign up for that?
Well, honestly, like we weren't told ahead of time that we'd be doing something like that. We were only told like day one. And so, we didn't really get a say in any of it, but yeah, it was really fun, like trying to automate that job and get it working.
How did it start for you? So what were you doing at the beginning and when did you realize you needed to automate? And then how did you figure out how to automate?
Um, so I think the first batch, right? It's easy, right? Everyone has the same questions, right?
Right.
And so I think it was the weekend, after the first week. So the first quiz went out. So I made all the quizzes. I sent those out, and then that weekend, I was like thinking like about like how I would have to build all of these. Like I was just basically thinking like way like weeks ahead, right? Like how will my life look in like 7 weeks, right? Like and I was like, it's gonna get pretty tedious to like build each quiz for each student.
There
And
goes your
I
summer.
yeah. And so I just kind of told myself like, on the weekend I'll just have my own little solo hackathon and see if I could build something like this in Python. And at the time it was like such a complicated thing because, I'd be basically parsing a CSV file of like, you know, the students' scores and stuff like that, right? Whether they got a certain question correct or not, right? And then basically taking that data and then processing it and then generating PDFs of like the quizzes, for the next week, right? And so yeah, it was really complicated and this was like before ChatGPT, right? Like I didn't have the luxury of just asking for some code, like vibe code, right?
Right.
To get it done. So I spent a lot of time Googling and spending my time on Stack Overflow, right? But but yeah, I remember feeling just like super powerful by the time I had a working prototype.
And did it take the weekend? So your hackathon, you finished and you had something?
Yeah. So I started Friday night, I remember, and I was like, I was staying up late just trying to get it to work. But then yeah, by Sunday evening, I definitely had working prototype, and was just like going in, doing some tests, like patching up some bugs here and there. So yeah,
It's a lot of fun.
yeah.
So kind of you got the bug, no pun intended, from the hackathon that you operated on. You then graduate from college. What did you do next?
Um, So I graduated with a degree in applied mathematics, and I had no idea what to do with my degree, how to apply it. That's the joke. Um, but but yeah, I actually uh was offered a job as a barista, like pretty much the day after graduation. So I like to tell like people I did get a job after I graduated. Just not the job that I thought, I would get with this kind of degree, right?
What other jobs were you looking at? Was there any
Um,
role you were looking at?
Yeah, I was looking at some like data science type roles.
Okay.
Because in 2016, like data science, like machine learning, like all that stuff was starting to kind of pick up, and it was like super hot field, right? So I was thinking like I have a applied math background, maybe those kind of roles would suit me. But yeah, I applied to a couple of roles, you know. I was pretty disheartened pretty quickly, because I didn't have internships and stuff like that during my undergrad. So it was pretty tough.
So you instead accept the job at the coffee shop. And what was it? Where was the coffee shop and what was its name?
It was in it was not downtown Davis, sorry. It was in South Davis. It was called Common Grounds Coffee. Unfortunately, it's not there anymore. They got pretty hammered during the pandemic, but yeah, it was just a small little local mom and pop shop.
And when you were there, you're at the espresso machine. And I know I asked you this before, but did you have a favorite type of coffee drink to make?
Yeah, so yeah, at the time I was really interested in like latte art and stuff like that. So I really liked making lattes because I could, practice my latte art. Definitely very rusty now. But
What
uh
were some of the different artworks that you could put on a latte?
uh I mean heart was a simple one. Tulips, the Rosetta I could do, but I think that was like probably the most challenging one for me. Definitely has a lot of technique involved.
And then while you were there, were you still thinking about kind of, what you wanted to do after that? Or were you just in the present, living post grad, having some fun in the college town? What was life like for you then?
I honestly it was pretty rough because I was not working nearly as much to afford uh rent and food and all that stuff. So um it was not easy. And I think so, going back to so I built that quiz generator and I was kind of inspired to become a software engineer. And I I had, at the time also had like a bunch of different app ideas like everyone else pretty much. But I was really curious about like how people go about just like building these MVPs.
Hmm.
And um, you know, I kind of dabbled in some HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Um, on like I think it was Free Code Camp or something like that. But yeah, I dabbled a little bit in that stuff, and yeah, I got kind of interested in it. And while I was working at the coffee shop, I spent the mornings every morning at my other favorite coffee shop called Temple on G Street.
Or are they still
Um,
are they
oh, sorry, that cut out for a second.
is Temple still there?
Yeah, Temple's still there. They're
Shout out to
great.
Temple.
Yeah, Temple Coffee. Yeah, great specialty coffee roaster. But yeah, I spent every morning 4 hours at that coffee shop. Bought coffee that I probably couldn't afford, but I'm very picky with coffee, so I just took the hit. But yeah, I spent a majority of my mornings there, kind of heads down, learning what I can online, through like free resources like Free Code Camp, YouTube, Code Academy, and also Udacity as well. I would take some of their free classes here and there. But yeah, so it was pretty much a grind when I was a barista. I was studying to become a software engineer, and then taking the bus to my actual part-time job at the Common Grounds coffee shop. And yeah, it was I mean, time went by so quickly because I had such a structured like life.
The
So
the routine was pretty locked in.
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
How did you advance in coding? Like, how did you go from, teaching yourself through free tutorials to the next level? What did that look like?
At some point I was like, okay, I think I know. I never feel like I knew enough, and I still don't feel like I know enough, to be honest. But at the time, I felt like at some point I felt like I had a solid foundation to some degree of how everything was working. And I was like, man, like I should start applying to jobs, um, you know, in the area, in the Davis area and Sacramento area, of course, and in Silicon Valley. But I didn't really hear back because I didn't have any experience. So I was kind of looking out for basically like any sort of internship opportunity that I could find, just so I can get experience, right? Um, and so yeah, I luckily I found a an unpaid internship opportunity at uh my first company, Food Gnome. And yeah, it kind of gradually turned into like a contractor role, and then after that became like a full-time role. Um, but since we were such a small startup, like the pay wasn't super competitive or anything like that. But really, I just kind of did it for the experience, so I could kind of move on after that and apply to more roles at other companies.
And you were able to get to Food Gnome. One of the things we talked about was kind of your advancement through Udacity. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what that looked like? You started out in the Nanodegree program, and
Right.
then you kind of progressed through there.
Right. Yeah. So, I while I was studying to become a web developer, I took the full stack nanodegree program, finished that, and then I was kind of on a roll. So I took the React nanodegree program as well, finished that, and then I was very active in the Slack channels on Udacity. I don't think they do that anymore, but when I think it was very cohort based at the time, so they had a Slack channel for each cohort, and I was very active on Slack. And I guess somebody that worked at Udacity noticed that I was very helpful and offered me a role to be a mentor for the React Nano degree. And so
Can you
yeah,
explain what that means and what it is to be a mentor at Udacity?
I mean, at the time, it was like I don't think I got paid for that work, but basically, kind of just jumping in and answering questions in the Slack channels for new cohorts. And like if they get stuck on a project, right? Like kind of looking at their code and kind of nudging them in the right direction. And yeah, just honestly, it's just like kind of being there for support too, because it's like
Yeah.
you're pretty much like drinking from a fire hose when you're learning web development, and so just kind of being there for moral support too, and just being like, yeah, you can do it, and getting them past that finish line. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
sure it helped too, coming from somebody that had just kind of been in that
exactly right.
in those
Yeah,
same shoes where, you're learning on your own and you're trying to teach yourself and you started from scratch and
exactly. Yeah.
so I'm sure that was pretty meaningful. So you became a mentor,
Mhm.
and then what?
Yeah, and then after that, that was unpaid too. So, I think at some point, that same person, I forgot her name. It was like Victoria or something. I don't know. She reached out to me, with an opportunity, to become a project reviewer, which actually is paid.
Okay.
So it's like a contractor role, and it was for the same Nanodegree program. So basically, I'd just look at all the code and give feedback. And if something's not working, kind of uh, understanding why it's not working, and then kind of helping, giving them hints, right, to get it to work. And yeah,
So you're kind
yeah,
of building up your chops and confidence by teaching others, which I think is a really important piece,
exactly.
right? Where
Yeah,
oftentimes, we learn a lot more by teaching others than we do by just kind of teaching ourselves, or learning from ourselves. And so, you get the confidence that way. You then go off to the startup, and spend some time there. You'd started as an unpaid internship, turned into a paid internship. Can you remind me? You were there for a year, you said? About a year?
I think maybe a little over a year.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was just a very gradual, path for me. And so I was thinking back, like, I don't really remember when I was actually offered that full-time role. Like, I wasn't like, cheering. I don't really, it's not like a memory that's imprinted in my head, because it was so gradual that, like, it was just kind of, I was just working as usual, right? Like, and I was getting paid full time now, but working on the same kind of problems, right? Um, and so yeah.
How did you decide that it was time to move on from there and do something new?
Yeah, so that role was my first ever, like, dev job, right? And so, I was so hungry to learn. And the one other engineer that I was working with, he was more so like a back-end engineer. Whereas, like, I really wanted to, like, hone in on front-end development. And I could only learn so much from him. And of course, this role was remote as well, most of the time. So, uh, I wanted to actually, get a job that is in the office. Like, I'm working on a team. Like, I could ask questions to an engineer that's sitting next to me and get feedback quickly. Um, and yeah, those are some of the reasons why I started kind of applying to new jobs. And of course, Udacity was one of those, companies that I applied for.
Let's talk about that in just one second. I want you to try to kind of go back and remember, you're at this job, you decide it's time to move on.
Mhm.
You are competing now with other, talented engineers in Silicon Valley for the most lucrative jobs. What was that like? What were some of the ups and downs of, you know,
Oh yeah.
progress?
Honestly, lots of downs. It was very rough out there. It's I was fortunate enough to have an undergraduate degree in like a STEM related field, but I had recruiters tell me that I was at a disadvantage because I didn't have a CS degree, and the algorithms would be just filtering out my application, right? And so really, like, I got a lot of rejections, too many to count for sure. And every once in a blue moon, I would actually get like an on-site interview, but you know, uh, engineering interviews are notoriously just difficult, and Those are some uh it basically like it's a skill, right? Like to be able to answer engineering questions in front of like a bunch of people on a whiteboard, right? And so, I failed a lot of interviews that I got. And yeah, I just try to learn from each one, and I would ask for feedback and stuff like that, and just keep chugging along.
How did you stay motivated after all of the no's?
Um, Honestly, I think the thing that kept me motivated was kind of being active in a community of people that are kind of in the same shoes. So, at the time when I was applying to jobs, I was also pretty active on Twitter. Um, there was this thread, I think it's called a thread on Twitter or X now, but I don't know. But it was the 100 Days of Code thread, and people would basically kind of share what they're learning that like on their journey of coding for 100 days. And yeah, people would comment on each other's like projects and like kind of encourage each other, right? And I was just very active on that in that community, and I would connect with so many different people out there in the web development community as well. And so that inspired me that there's people, in the same shoes, kind of facing the same amount of rejection, because like we don't have experience. And so I think that probably kept me going. And then also, I would try to attend like conferences and like meetups and stuff, even though like I had just almost no experience. Like, um, I just attend. I was really shy. Like I didn't talk to anyone. I just kind of sat there, while all these like really important
Absorb.
people like were like chatting and talking about tech.
You're just absorbing it.
And then the
How
other
did?
thing oh,
Oh, go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, the other thing that kept me going was there's some really just kind people out there. Down to name a few, like there's a guy named Michael Jackson, which is interesting.
I've
No,
heard of
not
him.
that Michael Jackson. There's a guy named Ryan Florence, Eve Porcello, Alex Banks. These are professional developers um, that work on open source, and like they teach what they know. And I was awarded some like scholarships here and there to attend some workshops, right?
Awesome.
And so those kind of opportunities, kept me kind of going, right? Even though all those rejections are coming in, right? That there's people out there that like understand and like want to help you out.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, the community and the support from others, it's a big part of all of this, right? And one of the things that's always been very important for me is a network of mentors who I can talk to about some of the challenges I'm facing,
Right.
get their advice and feedback, and talk through how I can navigate those challenges. How did you get the job at Udacity? You were a mentor, you were a project grader.
Yeah.
Interesting to hear that you had all of these other interviews before Udacity came up. So like, how did Udacity come up? What was that like?
Yeah. So, honestly, I remember I applied on a whim. I was like, like I'm doing okay at my current role. Like, I'm not getting paid that much, but I don't know. I think I was just getting a little too comfortable. And of course, like I've gotten so many rejections that like, I don't know. I didn't want to apply anymore. And so I think I just applied on a whim, and I didn't hear back for like 6 months.
Oh,
I don't know
come
why.
on, Udacity.
Yeah, come on. And yeah, like I remember I checked my email, and I saw an email from a recruiter from Udacity, and they're like, "Oh, are you still interested in this role? Like, I'd love to set up some time to chat." And I'm like, I forgot what role I had applied for because it's been so long. And I was like, "Sure, I'm always down to talk to recruiters." And yeah, that was the yeah, rest is history from there. It was funny because I don't I remember I think I was talking to my my girlfriend, now wife, um, and I was like, I don't know if I'll respond to this. And she was like, no, you should respond. Like, just do it, you know? And I was like, okay, I will, you know, like, and now I've been working here for so long, you know,
The butterfly effect, right?
butterfly effect, right?
Where you're just like, wow, if I she had said, yeah, no, forget about it, I wouldn't be here at all, and everything would be different.
Right.
That's so funny. Okay, let's dive in a little bit to what it's like as a software engineer at Udacity. What kind of projects are you building that get you excited to wake up and code?
So lately at work, like we are building like a ton of A/B tests. And, you know, I think from the get-go when I started this role, there was somewhat of an emphasis on A/B testing, all these new features and landing pages that we're building, but we weren't testing as much as we are now. And yeah, like A/B testing and building A/B testing infrastructure has always been really interesting to me. Um, I think the most interesting part is like I don't know. It's like a check on our assumptions. Like we assume that, you know, a specific thing will improve conversion, but, you know, it actually does the exact opposite of what you want.
And we've seen
Uh,
that happen a couple of
oh,
times.
I've seen that so many times. And like the smallest changes actually have the biggest impact, right? Like those kind of things just really are fun and you know, the results can be shocking sometimes in a good way and a bad way. But yeah, other than that, another thing that really gets me excited, maybe it's not super exciting for most people, but I really enjoy like thinking about web performance, bundle sizes and all that stuff, and kind of thinking about the end user and how like but all this JavaScript, all this HTML, CSS like gets that's you know sent to the user. And you know, there's so many like interesting statistics about like uh y- people like just dropping off because your page isn't loading you know fast enough. So basically yeah, like speed is super important. Like speed correlates with you know conversion, right?
Big time.
A big time. So so yeah, those are the kind of things that I kind of like waking up to and thinking about. Yeah.
That's fun. What tech skills do you find yourself using the most in your role?
What kind of tech? I so as a front end developer, like first and foremost, I'm building out landing pages, I'm building out features, user experiences on our website and checkout. So I'm pretty heads down in Next.js and React. Um, and also let's think. Yeah, I mean, really like I think, you know, Next.js like React, like it uses JavaScript, right? And TypeScript. Um, but you know, all these like layouts and landing pages that I'm getting like require a good amount of knowledge in CSS, right? So I think I spent a good amount of time in CS, like just thinking about CSS and how to kind of right take a design and bring it to life.
That's got to be so rewarding to kind of somebody gives you something, you're like, yeah, I can just build that.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
what's that like?
I I mean that instant gratification like of seeing the changes as you code is like incredible and it kind of keeps me in that flow state. Um but yeah, it's I mean thinking back like I always looked at all these applications. I'm like how the heck are people just building stuff like this, you know? And so it feels great that I can now like just take whatever idea and if I have enough time I could build it for people, you know.
Do you have side projects that you work on, as you kind of have your normal day-to-day projects?
Um, I haven't really been working on a lot of side projects, which I should be. But you know, I've built the most recent thing I built was this like this tutorial for like making pour overs, because
Oh,
my wife like you know I make her coffee every morning, and sometimes I'm not there, and so she doesn't know how to make coffee in the morning, and I was like, okay, I'll just I'll just build this like really interactive tutorial where she can kind of follow the steps. It has like a timer and everything like that, and like kind of tell you when like you should get ready to make the next pour, right? Um,
Is there a hold on. Is there a secret method to like a perfect pour over coffee in terms
oh
of how often you're pouring the hot water on the
yeah, there's different techniques. I forgot his.
news to me because we have the Chemex upstairs and I'm probably just butchering it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, like you just add hot water and stuff like that. But like, there's this Japanese guy that has his own specific method for making pour overs, and he's very particular about like you know h- what gram you pour to and in how much time, and that like when you adjust these parameters, like you get more sweet coffee or like more or less sweet coffee, more bright coffee, right? Like, um, it's interesting.
All right. Well, you will have to send me your tutorial because
Yeah, yeah, I'll definitely will.
dive into that. Um, kind of a question that I think is an interesting one. I know that we didn't talk about it yet, so I'll bring it in here. What what skills do you think overlap between being a barista and being a software developer?
That's interesting. Um, I think for me, like at least when I make coffee, I'm like I'm very precise, and you know, I want to be as consistent as possible with coffee, right? Like I don't want to make bad coffee in the morning. That'll just ruin my day. Um, and so I guess like when it comes to software engineering, like being like precise in like all the requirements, right? And my expectations, right? Like precise when it comes to like writing tests and having test coverage um is really important. Yeah, I think like for me, like both coffee and front end development, I treat it like a craft too. So I always am thinking about like how do I how do I do this better, right? Like every day, like how can I make this faster? How can I write this code cleaner or
It's like a
um right.
that's really cool. I like that frame on it a ton. Going back to the question we talked about earlier, I'm gonna pull it back in. So you mentioned that one of the things you like about applied math is that there are a lot of ways of solving a problem, and you kind of have to think through those ways. How do you approach problem solving in coding? So, for example, if you were to run into an issue that you haven't encountered before, how do you usually go about solving it? Do you have a method? How does it change? How does that method change based on the problem? What's kind of your approach to problem solving?
Honestly, I sometimes, if I really don't know what's going on, like I kind of have like I kind of throw the kitchen table, I'm sorry, the kitchen sink, right? Like at
Yeah,
the problem, like I just kind of try a bunch of different things, and yeah, like of course, like I take the error message, right? And of course, I read through the error message and try to understand why that's happening. But then, of course, like consulting, ChatGPT or like searching on Google or kind of getting into the weeds into like a GitHub repo for a particular module that's like failing, right? And seeing if other people have experienced it, right? Um, I, and if it's more so like, you know, building a specific feature and I'm kind of stuck on that, um, I kind of like again take that same approach of just trying different things and I fail a lot. Like I still, I feel I'm sure I've like developed features faster than I used to, but I definitely just still just like try to just get it working, like to any sort of degree, right? It doesn't have to be like the most optimal solution, but like a working solution, I think, is what I strive for first. And then after that, think about optimizations and stuff like
okay.
that.
It's really how do I fix it now? And then once you have a fix, it's how do I tune it?
Tune it. Yeah, exactly. Because like when you go through that process, you learn a lot. You learn a lot about the problem, the context of the problem, and then like once you get a working solution ready to go, um, and that's out, right? Like you could really kind of take some time and really think about uh, the really nitty gritty, but still have all that context, right? And then just like make it even better, right?
That's great. Couple more for you, and then we'll jump into some rapid fire, which should be fun. But the last one about kind of being the software engineer, uh, how are you using AI in your job today?
So, originally I was using GitHub Copilot for a while, and then that GitHub Copilot, for anyone that's not aware, is pretty much just like autocomplete for code, right? Like you can of course ask coding related questions in like a little chat, I believe. Maybe it didn't have a chat. I think it was just code completion.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, that was really helpful. I remember I was like just hitting tab and not really basically like supervising the AI, right? And sometimes it would just make stuff up and like is not what I want, and you would have to get in and kind of fix things up. But after that, I moved over to Cursor because our engineering org was kind of pushing for AI tools and increasing our productivity that way. And Cursor is pretty much VS Code and GitHub Copilot, but like way better for sure.
Yeah,
Um, and I think Cursor is what has the little chat box too, where you can ask it questions. It understands the context of the question in your code base. And so yeah, I'm really kind of at this point, I'm like a supervisor of AI, right? Like making sure that like what's being generated is, legit, not made up. And I could tell you it still makes up a lot of stuff. So, um,
there's a lot of
it
Bitcoin.
yeah, 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 yeah. But it's really, I mean, I'm just so productive for sure. Like, I don't think I could make as many pull requests that I do right now without AI. So, another tool that I started using recently is there's like a pull request uh, review AI in GitHub, and
Okay.
you can ask for a review, and it will basically kind of go through your code and the code base and give you some feedback on that pull request. For the most part, it does give pretty good feedback, but I think it was really useful when there have been times where there was like a really small, like little typo
Hmm.
that would have been like honestly fatal. Like it would have been bad. But it would have been really hard for just a normal, person to catch doing a pull request review. And so in those cases, like the AI caught it in seconds, right?
That's
And so I think I rely on that feature a lot more now because uh, you don't have to bother, Colby, my manager, or anyone else on my team, like uh, uh, to give me a pull request, the initial pull request review, because usually the initial one, like, there's a lot of small little nitpicky things, right?
the
And so,
typos. The typos just are they take a ton of time, right? So like
right,
you got a human reviewing that, and they found three typos. So you have the time spent on it, and it's not a ton of value add. And if AI can find them in a second,
exactly,
pretty much completely eliminate that step.
right,
That's
exactly.
so it sounds to me like, AI is an essential tool for, making your work more productive and efficient at this point,
Oh,
right?
definitely. I don't think I could live without it. No. I don't know how I did live without it.
Yeah, can you imagine? I mean, even just a couple of years ago,
Right.
things were so different.
Yeah.
All right, we'll jump down to rapid fire. What's the coffee order you make to get you through coding?
I'm a very boring guy. I really just like espresso. I guess I'm a purist in that sense. um, I just like kind of tasting all that, the really just like the essence of the coffee, right? Uh,
Do you pour it into a small espresso cup as well?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You got to. I like it. Dark mode or light mode?
Honestly, I actually use both. I'm out here in sunny California, so I like to program outside sometimes. So, using dark mode outside, like it's hard to see. So, yeah, kind of just during the night I use dark mode, during the day I use light mode.
Adapting to the environment.
Right.
What's the most surprising thing about being a professional software developer?
Uh, I think the most surprising thing is that imposter syndrome, it never goes away. Like I always thought at some point, once I crossed that like 5 year mark or, you know, at 3 year mark, like I'd feel like less of an imposter, but I always feel like it no matter what, even though I have so much experience under my belt now. Even being on this podcast, really.
Well, you're not an imposter. You're doing great work, and also that feeling of imposter syndrome. It doesn't matter what your role is. It doesn't
Yeah.
help for anybody, including myself. So, you're in good company. I hope. Coding playlists. Is it on repeat or silence?
Uh, I don't, I mean, I guess it's on repeat, but I definitely listen to like lo-fi music. I
Yeah.
think that's the preferred music for most software engineers, I guess.
We we
Uh,
we publish this podcast on Spotify. Do you have a Spotify lo-fi playlist that you like to listen to?
I forget what that one playlist is called. It has like that girl with the headphones, like
Okay.
working, like um,
But we'll have
I
to.
think it's just
Well,
like
listeners are looking out for it.
right. I
Girl.
think it's just lo-fi girl or something. I don't know.
All right. We'll look it up. In one word, describe your coding style.
Self-documenting, I think. I'm a stickler for that because like I think like once I'm no longer here, like someone else is gonna have to look at this code, and if it's not self-documenting and like readable, like it is gonna take a lot more effort to like understand what a particular piece of code is trying to accomplish.
And what you mean by that is adding comments into the code to
Yeah,
guide
either
post.
right. If it's like the variable names, right, like are precisely chosen, right? And if there's any ambiguity, like you said, writing comments and also like writing tests because when you write tests, you're basically writing um down what your assumptions are, right? And all the developers on our team, like when they write tests, they're saying like I'm trying to do this, right? I
Yeah,
expect this to happen in this context. And so if something breaks, we can handle it, and not ship uh broken code, right?
that's very important. Biggest myth about breaking into tech without a CS degree.
I think a lot of people, I don't know if this is the case anymore, but I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, I got to get into a coding boot camp, right?" Um and and then, then I'll get my first real job. But, I've definitely met plenty of folks that had a pretty tough time finding their first job too, even going through boot camp. So, but like I do see why some people go that route because it is a very structured program, right? You just kind of show up and you learn, right, with all these other people. Um, but for me, like I think if you're if you're like really good at like building a routine for yourself and kind of structuring your life, there's just so much free content online
Yeah,
that like you really can learn anything. And with the advent of ChatGPT, right, like uh you pretty much have like a coding buddy or mentor, you can use to like rubber duck any problems you have. Um but yeah, I think that would be the biggest myth.
all right, good one. Two questions left for you. The first is for someone listening who dreams of breaking into tech but feels stuck. What's your advice?
But feel stuck. I've I've been there and done that. Honestly, I think reaching out to a community and just kind of connecting with people that are in the same shoes, of course, is great. But also people that, people like me that have been there and done that and you know, gone to the other side, right? Like of that. And there's just so many kind of people out there, really, that just like are trying to, help and encourage uh new developers, right? Um, and there's so many opportunities that you can get just by asking for help, you know? Um,
Kind of
and
full circle there, right? Going back to your early days on Twitter and the 100 days of coding and
exactly.
support network that you were able to create.
Yeah. And like, yeah, a lot of these scholarship opportunities that I got weren't like advertised, right? I just was like, hey, I saw this workshop, like I can't afford it. It was like thousands of dollars to go. Usually a company pays for it, right? And I was like, does it hurt to just ask if they will like help me out, and maybe award me a scholarship? And a couple times I did, they gave me a scholarship, and those connections have been invaluable for me in my career too now. But yeah,
Yeah, I think one of the really important things you just touched on is you just have to ask. The worst that can happen is somebody says no.
yeah, somebody
Who
says
cares?
no. That's it.
Last one for you. So you talked about how AI is helping you in your career today.
Mhm.
A lot is changing in the tech space because of AI. What do you think that means for people who want to break into tech, and how should they think about AI as a, tool or an opportunity for breaking into tech?
I mean, like I said, like, if you're learning how to code, like ChatGPT, like, is going to be a great resource, right? Pretty much a mentor, a rubber duck for you. If you're kind of building your own side projects or going through a course online, right? Um, but yeah, I think like uh, it, I've talked to many folks about this, but it's interesting that like I'm so like dependent now on AI to do my job, and I think folks that are learning to code, like investing time, right, uh to like really learning how to use these new AI tools and kind of being as productive as possible is definitely really important. um But that's not to say like, yeah, like I think AI will definitely make it a little bit harder for some folks, right, to get their first job because, companies are kind of relying on AI to do a lot of uh the more junior level work, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um so, but I think like if you're really familiar with AI tools and you really understand how to use them and leverage it, uh, yeah, I think you can learn really fast, right? Uh, Build side projects really, really fast and really like understand. Um, as long as you're like good about like kind of going in and really understanding what the AI is spitting out. Um, I think those kind of, you know, AI tools will kind of teach you at the same time, if you know what I mean. Like, as long as you're diligent about that.
Yeah, so it sounds like the complement of AI tools with the foundation of coding and like a really good understanding of how those AI tools work can help you, really expedite your development as a software engineer and even help you land kind of that first job or help you break into tech. Uh,
Right.
Currently, we know that a lot of companies out there are looking for folks with those AI tool skill set.
Exactly. Yeah.
Adding that to it, I'm sure helps. Um, this has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate having you here today. And I really enjoyed our conversation. And enjoy working with you a lot. So really thank you, Satoshi, for joining us on the podcast, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jared.